Hey folks, Chris Josselyn here, going to be talking about arrow weight today. Arrow weight is very important. It's a big factor to consider when you're looking at your archery gear. I've always believed you should build your arrow around your broadhead and not the other way around. It's really important to do your research. So within about 5 minutes of searching the internet, you're gonna see that there are two groups of extremists on either end of the spectrum when it comes to arrow weight. You have some folks saying that a 300 grain arrow with a 2.5 inch expandable is going to go through anything in North America. Now you have others saying that you need a 600 grain arrow with a fixed blade broadhead to even consider hunting white-tailed deer. Now I don't believe either to be true. I think that you need to live somewhere in the middle and you need to find a nice balanced setup. The two big factors of arrow weight can be broken down basically into penetration versus trajectory. Trajectory is how flat your arrow is going to shoot. That's important for accuracy because you want to be able to be a few yards off with your yardage and still have a nice accurate shot. Penetration kind of goes without saying, but it's a really big factor, and it's going to basically determine how lethal you are, especially on a marginal hit that you maybe catch the shoulder. So both are important. I'll talk about my setup and kind of why I think this is about as well-rounded and devastating as I can get while hunting species of Maine. I'm going after mostly white-tailed deer, black bear, and turkey. With 418 grains and a 2-inch expandable being the G5 Havoc, I believe I'm at my peak when it comes to well-roundedness, penetration, trajectory, and basically any category of arrow weight that I can get into. There may be some folks out there that tell me I'm too light. Maybe some folks saying, oh well, that's pretty heavy, you can get away with a little less. Yeah, I don't care. I think 418 grains is perfect for my setup. I had a pretty good goal in mind when I was setting up my arrow. I wanted to shoot the G5 expandable. I've been a G5 junkie since I started bow hunting. I shot my first deer at 11 with a Montec, and was kind of hooked from there. I've had this same arrow with a Montec as well as a striker. However, since I added the expandable, I also put in a 50 grain weight screw just to give me a little more momentum, a little more front to center, which for those of you who don't know is the percentage of your weight that's in the front of the arrow. Front of center gives you really good downrange accuracy when it's windy, as well as a little more penetration for those expandable broadheads. One other thing I wanted to do when I was setting up this particular arrow was I wanted to be able to use the same setup I was using with fixed blades and the lighter setup, which is still using a single pin slider that I could set at 25 yards and anywhere within that 40-yard range not have to move my pin. So if I'm shooting at 5 yards straight under the tree stand or up to 40 yards, I can aim a little high or a little low and not have to move that slider and still be deadly accurate using this setup. So for me, that was kind of the best of both worlds. I'm able to shoot an arrow light enough that my trajectory stays nice and flat, as well as heavy enough that anything in Maine, even if I hit a deer in the shoulder, which I have, I'm going to bust right through and I have no problem being lethal on those species. So I'll kind of take this apart a little bit and just disassemble. Now I like to use the lighted Nox. Adds a little more weight to the back, but to me that's a fair trade-off to have really good indication of where that shot's gone, as well as being able to find that arrow later on, especially if it is a marginal hit and I need to find that arrow after dark. I can do so. Now Carbon Express comes with a 4 grain knot collar. To me, 4 grains for the amount of protection this adds to the end of your arrow is great. These are some of the most durable arrows I've used, and I think the knot collar provides a great service at a very low cost when it comes to your weight in the back. And what I mean by that is, generally if you're going to be adding weight to your arrow, you're going to be adding it to the front, just to give you that extra front of center. So I don't use any wraps this season. I'm not saying I never will, I never have, but right now I'm just using the factory, maximum blue fletchings. I like that. As I indicated before, I'm using a 50 grain weight screw. So that's what that looks like. Essentially, all you have to do is use your weight screw wrench and screw it into the back of your insert. Now, one added benefit that most people don't realize is when you use a weight screw, you're also adding in a little extra snugness on your broadhead. So once you screw that on tight and then you screw the weight screw in also tight, and you do want to do it in that order. If you screw the weight screw in first, you may end up with your broadhead sticking out a little bit. You don't want that. You want it to be nice and tight to that insert on your broadhead, and then screw the weight screw in. But anyways, it gives you a nice, really kind of Loctite seal. And then, to kind of finish off my setup, I'm shooting a 100 grain Havoc expandable. That's a 2-inch cutting diameter. I find it's absolutely devastating. It penetrates almost as well as any fixed blade I've shot, and probably better than a lot of them. I pull 72 pounds, so that's giving me quite a bit of, velocity off the string, and that way I can, get that nice flat trajectory using a 418 grain arrow. A lot of guys are shooting in the 60 pound range. There's nothing wrong with that. I would just simply say, build your arrow setup accordingly. If you are pulling 60, if you're going to pull that 60 pounds or less, you're more than welcome to be using expandables and ethically using expandables. I don't think anyone should discourage you from that. However, I would say add weight. It's kind of a misconception. Everyone thinks if you're going to be shooting a lower poundage, you should also be shooting a lower weight on your arrow. That's absolutely not true. If you're going to be shooting a lower poundage and you're trying to push out a pretty big cutting diameter expandable, you're going to want to be adding weight as opposed to subtracting it, and that's simply because you're going to get more momentum that way. Excuse the cat in the background. Do your research. Make sure that you are, setting up something that's tailored for you, and you should be successful in the field.